This gray and endlessly dreary evening, as the sky closed the horizon tightly under a layer of dark clouds, Melissa's heart was filled with an unbearable sense of longing. She sat in the kitchen, her gaze staring out the window, where the rain, like bitter tears, slowly poured down the glass, leaving behind fanciful patterns. In such moments of loneliness, when everything around her turned into a gray veil of oppression, she wanted to simply dissolve, to escape from this reality and her losses. Memories of bright days filled with joy and hope would slip before her eyes for a moment, and once again she would ask herself, when did I stop being happy? Each new day seemed a veritable curse to her, plunging her into an endless quagmire of chores and hopelessness. Melissa was married to Jack, a slacker who wouldn't leave his devastated soul on the bed of the couch, where a bottle of beer awaited him rather than a cuddling wife. Every time Jack came home, it was as if he embodied the image of unfulfilled hopes. Fired from numerous jobs, he was still looking for excuses to stay on the couch with a carefree expression on his face. He spent hours staring at the TV, and a bottle of beer always proved to be his best friend. It had become a routine that was making him sick. Melissa watched in horror as the days turned into dark nights and the nights turned into even darker days. She was gradually losing herself in this madness, in this endless cycle in which her life repeated itself repeatedly, like a boring movie with no plot. Every evening, as she looked up from the dinner she had prepared, she stumbled across his silent figure, immersed in an endless stream of empty phrases from the television. The very thought of Jack not caring about her, but only about himself, drove her crazy. Her heart fluttered with melancholy and fear of the future. Routine chores, cleaning, cooking, became not only gestures but torture for her. She could feel her soul sprawling and only the sparkle of a forgotten dream remained in her eyes. And then one day the situation had to change. Melissa heard sounds that reminded her that someone was ringing the doorbell. She turned around and saw her grandson Tomi standing on the doorstep with a wide smile. Upon seeing him, she felt a pervasive sense of joy that was overshadowed by her worries. But in that joy soon slipped a sadness. How uncomfortable Tomi's meeting with Jack would be. Tomi was young and full of life, his presence always bringing lightness to a home that had long suffered from indifference. Melissa was afraid of how he would take his grandfather, immersed in gluttony and idleness. She clouded her mind with images of her grandson, smiling genuinely and looking forward to new encounters, stumbling over the unfolded empty bottles of beer scattered in the public corners of the house, the dim light of a screen that spoke louder than they did. Tomi entered, and his luminous energy filled the room. He paid attention to every detail, looking for amusement and wonder in the old house. Melissa felt uncomfortable watching the two men's faces reflect drastically different worlds. Tomi laughing, with the children with their stories of adventure, and Jack stretched out on the couch, absorbed in yet another match, with a bottle of beer in his hands, as if that was where he found the meaning of his existence. Despite the joy of the encounter, Melissa couldn't shake the feeling of embarrassment. This awkward moment made her gut clench. I'm so embarrassed in front of Tomi. She dreamed of a perfect family, of a moment of joy, but those real pictures of beer bottles and absorbed stares didn't jibe with her dreams of happiness. She tried to distract herself, but the thoughts came back. What would Tomi think? How would he perceive his grandfather, held captive by his inactivity? In that moment of tension, her inner world split apart. Melissa realized that her husband's life priorities had destroyed everything that was important to their family. The ding of the beer bottle behind her reminded her of something unnecessary, abrupt and unacceptable. She sighed heavily and glanced at Tomi, who was laughing loudly as if he was about to fill their home with joy once again. The look in her grandson's eyes was the healing she needed so badly right now. Tomi didn't notice the grayness, the hopelessness that surrounded her, and that was his strength. He was completely distant from it all. His smile briefly set Melissa free. Her mind wandered around this idea. How can I bring this joy into my life, into a home that was once full of love? Melissa realized it was time to change everything, not only for her own sake, but for Tomi's as well. She couldn't let his youth be devastated by this decayed state they found themselves in. Her heart filled with hope and determination, and then she decided to act to regain all that had been lost and finally make her way into the light where the hands of the shadows could no longer reach. When Tomi entered the house, his energy filled the space with a fresh breath, like a spring breeze dispersing the dark clouds that obscured the sky. Melissa, with each of his sincere words and light laughter, gradually felt her heart begin to beat differently. Next to him, she suddenly felt young and alive, feminine, as if the bright lights in her life that she hadn't been able to see for so long had come back on. Her thoughts of Jack receded into the background, and she let herself forget about the gray of everyday life. The joy in Tomi's eyes was infectious, and as he laughed, Melissa smiled too, unable to contain her emotions. Every comment he made was full of sincerity, and this spontaneous happiness was becoming almost a fairy tale to her. However, deep down Melissa knew that joy was only a temporary refuge, her past still haunted her. The moment Tomi pulled her against him, she felt her heart sink with tenderness and pain at the same time, as if she was facing again what she had lost. He hugged her tightly, his hands on her back, and she suddenly realized how much she missed support, some warm shoulder to lean on. Tomi's touch was unexpected. It was full of sympathy and understanding. He gently wiped away the tears that rolled inexorably down her cheeks, and there was an unspoken concern in that gesture. In his eyes Melissa could read something she had long forgotten. She wasn't just a shadow, she was a woman, beautiful and statuesque. It was as if that young gaze revealed new facets in her, filling her with something fresh and ogling. Tomi looked at her with different eyes. He didn't just see her as a grandmother, he saw a woman who could be gentle and strong at the same time. This realization stirred a storm of feelings in her that she had suppressed for so long. The groundedness of his gaze and the serenity with which he embraced her made her heart beat louder. She made her own little world in that embrace, where her hurts and frustrations dissolved. Melissa allowed herself to think about what it felt like to be desired. Every step they took together, every whisper passing between them brought a new realization. Tomi, as if an unwitting guide on a path full of life, was showing her that she was not only a mother and grandmother, but a woman capable of loving, dreaming, and being happy. But in that moment of tenderness, a shadow slipped in, the shadow of her past. It was hard for her to open up, unsettling to let herself know that maybe she could be loved again. What if this fleeting sensation was just an illusion? She often looked into Tomi's eyes, and had the desire to take a step further, a step towards something new, but fear restrained her. Tomi, seeing her pensive look, squeezed her gently in his arms, as if he sensed that her heart was not yet ready to let go of old fears. He whispered a quiet promise to her, "I'm here. No one can take your joy away from you." Those words were like balm to her wounds. They reminded her that where there was hope and a desire to live in a new world, there was bound to be room for love. Melissa, laughing through her tears, felt her vulnerability fill with light. Her eyes sparkled like never before. She realized that the cold reality that had surrounded her for years was now receding before this exploding tenderness, this warmth emanating from Tomi. He gently pulled away to look into her eyes, and she saw the sincerity and adoration in them. This moment between them was like a single moment of warmth in the midst of inclement weather, the moment when two people, two dreams, finally decided to connect. Tomi took a deep breath, and that simple gesture was a revelation to Melissa. Their relationship could be more than just an exchange of loving glances. She felt a shiver run through her, and the moment he embraced her again, everything around her quieted, stopped. A new hope was sprouting in her heart, hope that she could open her doors to the love that was perhaps destined for her. She relaxed her shoulders a little and stepped into this new adventure, full of generosity and loss, yet full of tenderness and openness. With each new touch from Tomi, with each touch of his lips against her skin, Melissa felt more and more alive. This young man brought not only tenderness but strength into her life. He was helping to pave the way for her to discover herself. She was ready to break free from the shackles that had held her back for so long. It was a new day, shining on the horizon like a sunny spring morning, full of tenderness, joy, and countless promises. Melissa realized that a light was being rekindled in her life, and that warmth would be with her as long as she was willing to open herself up, as long as she was willing to allow herself to love.